this is a new low-profile keyboard you may have been waiting for. It's the iQunix MQ80, a keyboard I think you all are going to find very interesting, and it could just be the best low-profile keyboard of 2025. When I made a video on iQunix's last keyboard, the Magi 65, I was overwhelmed by comments from people who loved the keyboard, except they had one major problem with it. And today, they fixed that problem. You see, the original Magi 65 already checks every box you could want in a low-profile keyboard. However, it had something holding it back. The keyboard was just too small, but they fixed it. Instead of a smaller 65% layout, it now comes in a more breathable 75% layout, which is the exact same, but it has that sweet function row on that top. Ooh, how I love you, function row. But there are a few other things you'll want to know about this keyboard too. And is it really the best low-profile keyboard of 2025? Well, this is where things get a little difficult, because after a few weeks of testing this bad boy out, I've been trying to answer that very question. So let's get into it. I was sent an early prototype of this keyboard by iQunix, but I was not paid to review it. It's currently available on Kickstarter for a limited amount of time, which means you could swoop it up at an insanely good price of $99. However, that $99 comes with an asterisk, because you typically have to wait a while for the product to be made, and you do take a small risk by backing them, which I'll talk more about later. So is the MQ80 for you? Well, for starters, this thing sounds and feels incredible for such a thin keyboard. It's like nearly on par with a normal mechanical keyboard. It has a nice creamy sound, a flexible and soft typing experience, and it's loaded with features that other low-profile keyboards don't typically have, such as VIA. But the MQ80 might have a few issues, or features, depending on who you're asking. You see, the case is made of a nice thick aluminum, which makes the keyboard feel sturdy and premium. It has a all smooth black design with a nice cherry red aluminum accent on the side. They also have a white version called Moonlight Silver with the same red accent. The backside has a cool design. It sort of reminds me of those tangram puzzles I used to solve as a kid, with the machining and the curves looking surprisingly good. And it has these little X's for feet on the back, so no kick of feet if that's something you're looking for. It does have a tendency to pick up fingerprints after touching, so keep that in mind. But that's not the real potential issue I have with it. It's really freaking heavy, so if you want to throw it in a backpack and take it with you, well, you'll basically be lugging a block of aluminum. Don't get me wrong, it's still lighter than a normal keyboard like the Rainy 75, but not nearly as lightweight as something like a plastic build of the low free flow Lite, which might be a better option if you want something more portable. But there's another crucial element that might be the reason you buy this product or decide to pass on it. But to explain it, I first need to describe the typing experience. For being a low profile keyboard, it feels amazing. The switches inside, called the gold red switches, have a nice smooth lightweight feel with a creamy bottom out. And the keyboard comes in a unique case design called Lettre mount, which is similar to a gasket mount. Instead of gaskets, the PCB has these flexible cutouts instead that bend when you press the keys, and it feels great. But this awesome typing experience, like the full aluminum build we talked about earlier, comes at a cost, and it removes one of the advantages of having a low profile keyboard in the first place, and that's the fact that they're low profile and super thin. To have this bounce and this flex, you need to have extra room or space for the plate and PCB to move up and down while typing. So to create that space, iQunix added a bit of extra height to the front of the keyboard. Now it's only a millimeter or two higher than the low free flow 84, but you can feel the difference when typing on both of them side by side. It's still significantly shorter than a normal keyboard, much shorter, but the MQ80 feels like a in-between and almost medium profile keyboard, if you will. I find the height quite comfortable to type on, and it could be right in the Goldilocks zone depending on who you're asking. But if you're buying a low profile keyboard because you want it to be thin as humanly possible, then this probably isn't for you. With that in mind, and the fact that it's still pretty heavy, it makes me view the MQ80 as more of a sit at your desk keyboard than a take it with you anywhere keyboard. But on the flip side, it's really nice to have the luxuries of a normal keyboard in this thinner profile design. So when comparing it with the low free flow Lite, I feel like it's almost comparing apples and oranges. But is it the best thin keyboard of 2025. For the all aluminum thin keyboards category, it could very well be the best. But to figure that out, we need to compare it with the biggest competitor product, the low-free Flow 84. The Flow 84 is very similar in a lot of ways, and you can tell the MQ80 is heavily inspired by it. They both feature a sleek aluminum build in the exact same 75% layout, and they both have these color tabs on the side, although there are a few major differences. The MQ80 has a light on the side that you can customize with a few shortcuts to change the color and lighting pattern, and if you hold FN and B, it can tell you how much battery it has left. Each blink represents 10% battery, while the Flow 84 does not have this feature. While it's nice to have, it's not gonna make or break a buying decision. Another key difference is that the Flow 84 comes with a toggle switch on the back, which I'm a huge fan of. It lets you switch between wired and Bluetooth connectivity, although there's no 2.4G option here, so you can only do Bluetooth. Boo. The MK80, on the other hand, can do all three, which is a huge plus for the iQunix board. But the MQ80 does not have the toggle switch. So to go between wired 2.4G and Bluetooth, you need to use keyboard shortcuts listed on the manual. Now, I'm not a huge fan of this. I'm of the opinion that a keyboard should just work if you plug it in. But the upside is, once you get your keyboard set up, it's straightforward to use. There's no dongle storage on either keyboard, so when not in use, make sure not to lose it. iQunix has an on-off switch underneath the caps lock, but they promise me it's only for emergencies or when you need to do a hard reset. Instead, you can turn it on and off holding FN and escape. Not ideal, but better than other keyboards. Another feature that I really think sets the MQ80 apart from the Flow 84 is the fact that it has VIA. VIA is a browser-based software that makes it extremely easy to remap keys and do a host of other things. It's such a huge bonus, especially on compact keyboards like this. And if you compare the build quality of both keyboards side by side, the MQ80 feels much more sturdy and the metal feels thicker, which makes it a lot heavier too. So do I recommend the MQ80 over the Flow 84? Well, first we have to look at some important details. In the box, you get the keyboard itself, a user guide and manual, which you're definitely going to need later, a dongle and a cold cable, which apparently the final version would just be a normal cable. I also get a metal keycap and switch puller, but apparently the final version will be plastic. It all came tucked away in this nice zip-up carrying case, so you can expect a couple of small changes with what you get in the box, but the keyboard itself should be the exact same. When it comes to battery size, the MQ80 has a 4000 mAh battery, which should last around 350 hours, which is twice the size of the Flow 84. The RGB is also pretty bright, and although the hot swappable switches are north facing, the keycaps are not shine through. So if you're typing in the dark, it's a little tough to see which keys you're pressing. The keycaps themselves are a nice PBT plastic, which doesn't pick up any oil from your fingers. Although I do think the keycaps on the Flow 84 are easier to see and higher contrast. The stabilizers on the board feel pretty good, but there's a tiny bit of rattle on the backspace. This could be an early prototype issue, though I didn't have this problem with the previous keyboard, but it's worth keeping in mind, and you'll hear that in the sound test later. Inside the case, you get a flexible FR4 plate, which honestly looks really cool. It helps make the typing experience more bouncy. You get 3 layers of foam between the plate and the PCB, pour-on foam, an ISP switch pad, and a PET sheet. Then you get a closer look at the PCB and the Lettre mount. You can see how it bends when pressure is applied to the PCB. Pretty cool design. And then on the bottom are 2 more layers of foam. Dang, this thing's packed. Another sheet of pour-on, and an IXPE bottom case foam. So if you do end up taking your keyboard apart, you have to be careful with the ribbon cables. These can be quite easy to break, so take extra care with them. So should you back the MQ80 on Kickstarter? To answer that, you have to keep in mind that backing early products comes with a few pros and a few cons. The pro is that you can get it at a cheaper price than the normal price at $99 instead of the final pricing at $139. While on the other hand, you have to wait a little bit longer. You may experience some delays if there's production issues, but iQunix has been around for a while now, and I've never had any problems with them or their products so far. That being said, you do take a risk by backing this product. So if the final keyboard turns out to be as good as this one, I think it's safe to say it's the best low profile keyboard right now, if you're okay with it being a little taller and a little bit heavier than the other options. Good job, iQunix. If you want to see my other favorite low profile keyboards, check this video out here.